Hey guys, welcome back. BDCKR here. We're back with our weekly recap for the week of April 22nd, 2021. This is our recap of all things Injustice. The current character challenge is Bounty Hunter Lobo, or Lobo Bounty Hunter. That's a 1 week repeat, and for that, the required characters are Flash, Green Arrow, and Green Lantern, who are all bronze. You can get them all at bronze in the store, so really easy for newer players to snag this challenge. Should be no trouble at all. His passive is Hooked, which is when Lobo performs Special 2, the enemy cannot tag out until the fire damage over time runs its course, and every successful Special 2 makes the next Special 2 damage and damage over time length go up by 20%. He's got 1,250 attack and 950 health. He was last available in June of 2020. Important to note about this challenge is that it's fewer fights than usual. It's 9 fights for each ladder and then 12 instead of 12 fights for each ladder and then 15. So it's much more encouraging for the newer players.
Yeah.
Especially.
So he's so interesting, and he's interesting in general and specifically for us.
Mm-hmm.
So he's got medium stats. They're low compared to, the more recent challenge golds. But at one point, his was the highest attack, which puts everything in perspective, right? Because he's not really there. When he was first released, I'm pretty sure, and I haven't gone back to really check, that he came before Tanty Totem, because I remember that his passive was pretty useless, because if you're relying on Special 2 to make him useful, it would take too long to generate power. And then, to get successive Special 2s to be more damaging, those would be wicked long fights.
Yeah.
And I think he might have been the first gold character with a juiced damage over time passive.
Huh.
So something to make it more than just, do special, do some damage over time.
Yeah.
The biggest problem, I think, with him, and if anything, the only problem with him, is that his Special 2 isn't ranged enough. And by that I mean, the range of his attack, the distance between you and your opponent when you start your Special 2, the range of the first hit is less than how far Master's Death Cart will shove the opponent away. Because in my mind, the ideal loadout for any Special 2 specialist usually involves Tanty Totem, Master's Death Cart, and you can do variations with Razgul Scimitar or Batgirl, but because those are one-time things, but Master's Death Cart is every time you tag in, it's better. And it shoves so far, you don't get the full value of his Special 2 because his first hit is actually a big chunk of the damage.
Yeah.
And, Master's Death Card keeps them from blocking, so you're gonna, if they're within range, not only do you do most of the damage, but it's also unblocked. Mm-hmm. Now, because our avatar is literally Lobo for our channel.
Yeah.
We've played a lot with him before. We've even got a playlist that's just him. And we really want him to be great. Oh, and the link, it's linked in the description. We really want him to be great, but he's only just good. So if the range was better, if it was easier to get a Special 2 immediately on tag-in, like with Teen Titans Raven, whose range is spectacular.
Yeah.
New 52 Wonder Woman. He could be great. Because he's got really interesting things, besides all the things that we just talked about. Despite having damage over time as an add-on effect for Special 2, his Special 2 still does full damage. So let's say you compare him to Shazam Prime, who has the same damage stat. They both have the same amount of damage for Special 2, but there's no effect with Shazam. Another example, different power levels, but Regime Superman does half damage on Special 2 because it's unblockable. Arkham Knight Catwoman only does 3/4 damage for damage over time, to give up for damage over time when you compare to other characters that are the same damage as her.
Yeah.
So he could be spectacular. He's just that one little bit that has nothing to do with his passive or his stats that makes him not quite great.
Yeah. So there we go. This week's multiplayer reward is Nightwing's Ninjato, which becomes the Brandished Ninjato. And its effects are 90% of enemy AoE damage to wielder of this item with 50%, retarget 90% of enemy AoE damage to wielder of this item with 50% damage absorb, 40% max health increase, a Nightwing specific ability, which is reflect 16% damage, and the evolved ability, which is give 300% of received area of effect damage as power. It was last available in October of 2020. We expect Riddler's Cane / Riddler's staff next week.
Yeah. I know some people really like this gear, given how often we see it on metal teams. Said it a bunch of times before, and they've put it on specifically Batman Ninja Nightwing. And it's interesting because it's really, really good on Nightwing.
Mm-hmm.
But because as much difficulty as I have, as much of a pain as he is when you face him with it, I still don't like using Mario teams because that's really a defensive defensive kind of gear.
Yeah.
And it is offensive when you generate enough power, but then it has to be in a very specific situation, which we often will take advantage of with our Flashpoint team and Splash with Deathstroke.
Mm-hmm.
But it's not for every fight, right? So here's the thing. The abilities have a really interesting synergy, right?
Yeah.
So 90% of splash damage gets pulled onto the character holding Ninjato. And 50% of that gets dissipated, meaning teammates only get hit with 10% of the original splash damage. And the holder gets 45% in addition to the original special damage.
Mm-hmm.
Now, 40% boosted health means you're going to survive. You have a better chance of surviving the special and splash. And then that received splash becomes power when you've evolved the gear.
Mm-hmm.
No idea how it's calculated, but I've seen someone with Ninjato coming in with a full 3 bars of power after doing 1 splash damage hit with Deathstroke on our Flashpoint team. Mm-hmm. Damage reflection is good, but 16% is not a lot. What really is, that the fact that there is any is actually what makes this a great gear.
Yeah.
So here's the funny thing. This is that there's a really weird synergy between this gear and being hit with Master's Death Card.
Mm-hmm.
So, in Master's Death Card, quick recap. So, the 20% tag in, blocking is reduced by 20% after tag in. Don't care. 100% area effect. Opponent's team takes 15% damage from specials. So that's the splash damage. The combo under area effect, don't care. But the evolved abilities, unblockable damage on tag in 20%. So when you tag in, the unblockable damage on tag in is a bunch of little hits on the opponent that generates power for you, usually about 1 bar. And it doesn't say that on the ability, but that's great, right? So when you tag in with the Ninjato, so you get power for every one of those little hits that count as you hitting them. But if they're Nightwing with Ninjato and reflecting the damage, right, because of the ability, they get power from the reflected hits hitting you.
Yeah.
So the reflection counts as hits, and they generate power. And you get a small amount of power from getting hit in multiplayer, but you get less for being hit than hitting. So it actually is helpful to the other team when they've got Nightwing with Ninjato.
Yeah.
Now, the other ability, the area effect, special, the splash damage from your specials, unlike other area effects that are one shot, right? So you do an area effect with Ares, and you've got Fourth World Mace. Boom. All at once. This comes as a bunch of little hits. If these hits get redirected from the off-screen opponents to the card in front of you because they have a Ninjato, then those hits will generate power even independent of the amount that you'll get when you fuse it, which converts it to power too. So that's why sometimes you'll get a little bit of power generated, and sometimes you'll get like a huge amount and it just grows like, I don't know, think of something that grows really fast. I don't know, I can't think of the analogy. So if you do a special...
Like a teenager in high school?
Like a teenager in high school, exactly. So if you do a special, they get power from reflecting the special damage. They get power from the splash damage on the off-screen opponents that's redirected to the Ninjato holder as reduced splash damage. And they get power from the evolved ability of changing splash damage to power. So it's really powerful, and it becomes a real race to do a special before they do, because it's crazy. I mean, all those hits count, right? All that the splash damage from Master's Death Card counts as power too. But often you won't generate it fast enough. So you'll get power, then he'll get way more power, and then he'll be able to hit you with a special, even though your specialist there is almost good enough to actually hit them back.
Yeah, so this isn't a great gear for offense, but this is one of those gears that is actually really good for defense because, you know, it can be a pain in the butt to face, depending on how you're geared out, either on purpose to do splash damage or even sort of almost by accident, right? Because Tantu Totem, Master's Death Card, the splash damage isn't really the focus. It's not why we have it on. But it still ends up being really effective. And I would imagine that this would be even more effective on a defensive team at a little bit of a lower level of play, where people might focus more on splash damage because they don't have Tantu Totem, for example.
Right.
And so you can actually end up... I can see this as a defensive gear being the difference between somebody beating you versus losing.
Yeah.
And that makes it actually really, really good for defensive fights.
Yeah, because you have to hit them really hard. What happens is they generate a ton of power. They've got extra health from Ninjato in order to absorb that damage. So you've got to really hit them hard and hope that you knock them out. Because if you don't, you're vulnerable to a special. Like, really vulnerable.
So I would definitely call this a really good gear, even if we don't use it very much, which is rare, right? Because most of the time when we don't use a gear, it's bad. But in this case, just for its value to potentially earn you passive battle points, it's pretty strong.
Yeah.
In the store, we have Arkham Killer Croc Early Access Bundle for $24.99 Canadian. It comes with 100,000 credits. It doesn't unlock in the store. It's probably included next week's. And if it is next week's, we have had sort of something interesting going on.
Yeah, there's been a series of repeats. This happened back in June of last year. So there's been a sequence. Bounty Hunter Lobo now is the 5th in a row. If next week actually is Arkham Killer Croc, which is very likely, that's 6 weeks in a row. And if the pattern holds after that, then it'll be Killer Frost Prime again.
So we'll see.
Yeah.
We also have the Metropolis pack for $24.99 Canadian. And that comes with Crypto Lex Luthor, Superman Prime, and Doomsday. All are already available in the store for power credit. So it's kind of a crummy deal.
Yeah.
I guess the only difference is that it doesn't matter that they don't unlock in the store. I guess if you're a brand new player and you want to start off with a gold team, that's not the worst, right?
Right.
But it's not...
Doomsday's pretty good.
Yeah, you can make it work. It just... There's not... For the point that we're at, there's no value.
Yeah.
And but if you're at an intermediate point, it's very little value. But if you're brand new, I guess it does have some value. And it's people that you can, like, continue working on, right? In your own sort of time. But I don't know. In our Survivor, we have the Suicide Squad companion gear set until the 5th of May, 2021. Phantom Zone has one more week left. Fight 62 is still broken.
Yeah. So last week's breakthrough was Zod, Aquaman, and Shazam, which we expected. This coming weekends is probably going to be Catwoman, Deathstroke, and Raven. Link in the description to Reddit thread started by Devlin16 that goes over the complete breakthrough cycle. And that's it for the regular stuff. Now, we could go on. We've already talked a bunch. I don't know if we want to really go into the same detail that we do about glitches, because they are available in a playlist at the top right corner and in the description. And each one of those videos is a tutorial about how to do it.
So we'll go through really quick, I guess. Power credits, we won't tell you how to do the glitch. Find it if you want. Other things that you might want to do that you can't do right now, that you actually can't do, is getting past multiplayer season rewards, getting early multiplayer season rewards, getting through Phantom Zone supernaturally quickly, or getting free energy without watching the video. In terms of stuff that does work, Phantom Zone reset and challenge reset both work. We've got some info in the description for iOS and Android 10 users on sort of quality of life for Android 10 and doing it at all for iOS users that we have that should work well. Breakthrough glitch is still working.
Airplane mode / refund glitch is also still working. Time shifting for unlimited play is still working. Make your clock back to normal before you're done using it. And the promotion glitch, hasn't failed us, but we haven't had a chance to be able to use it for a couple of years now, so it's still there.
Yeah.
Because it hasn't failed us when it was supposed to be working.
And then to finish up, we'd like to give some thanks to some folks. So that's a thank you to Console, Peasant, and Edwoon, who are supporting us on Patreon at the top tier Last Word. Mohammed Albshaiti, who are supporting us at the Your Message Here tier. Shawn, Farrell, Daniel Simonson, Aaron Maule, Michael DeVries, Brandon C., Irvin Ruiz, and Eddydoo, who are supporting us on the credited level. And Chris Wolff, Scarlet, Dani, Awesomegamer241, Pavu RS, Gavin, Mallott, and Isfar E at the gratitude level. Thanks so much for your support. Thanks so much to all of you for watching. We'll see you next time. Komoda.